As we look at it again, we may see, and I hope we do this morning, or remind ourselves of some of the truths that will give us hope in this day and age. Because I don't know about you, but I'm quite sickened by the news of the stabbings, the riots, the wars. And it's hard to think what we can do, where we can make a difference, what we can do. We're ordinary people. I'll speak for myself, not that great intelligence. We can often feel, I can do nothing. This story tells us totally differently. Because first of all, it tells us that God can use anybody, and he does. And that's good news, because that includes you and me. It's regardless of age, from the smallest to the oldest. It's regardless of sex. It's regardless of ability or disability. God can use anybody. Jesus was getting known. People had heard of him. They'd heard some of his teaching. They'd seen perhaps some of his miracles. And so they flocked to hear him again when he came into their area. I can remember as a child going to the first Billy Graham meeting, and everyone was going, and the churches had double-decker buses to take people. It was just thronging to hear him. And again, when he came the second and the third time, and other big conferences there's been, people flock to hear. And so it's with no surprise we read that people flock to hear Jesus. It's the same today. These big numbers, I used to think 5,000, but I passed Beckenham Place Park yesterday. There was a concert on last night, and I believe it's on again tonight. And people were flocking there. And if you see on the television, we're country and western fans, and we watched Dolly Parton at Glastonbury, and honestly, there were thousands, just like in the story. 5,000 people came to hear Jesus. And Jesus looked at them and was filled with compassion. And he said, where are we going to find food to feed all these people? Although he knew what was going to happen. And the disciples, Philip said, well, even if we spent 8 months' worth of salary, we wouldn't be able to get enough food for these. And Peter came forward with a gift from a little boy of 5 small loaves, probably small little rolls, and 2 fish. And Peter said, there's a lad here with 5 loaves, 2 fishes. What are they amongst so many? But it was enough in the hand of our great God. Why did he offer it? Maybe, like children, he overheard. You see, often if children go to these events, you push them to the front so they can see. And he may have overheard this. And he could have been thinking, I'll give my lunch to Jesus. In the hand of Jesus, this small amount was enough. On the face of it, no. But last week we had a story about Sarah. When she was told she was going to have a child, she laughed. And God said to her, "Why do you laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord?" 5 loaves, 2 fish, 5,000 people. Is anything too hard for the Lord? No. So why do we worry? Time and again in the Bible, God uses the least person that you'd think of in worldly terms to do his will. God uses anybody. The lad came forward in good faith, not like a little lad we saw. We went to this big estate in Surrey that put on these, the whole of the Nativity, the whole of the Bible story about Jesus. They put it on in this huge estate. You take your lunch, you move from place to place. It's the same people that do the Easter story in Trafalgar Square every year. But they walked around. The disciples were walking around at this particular point. We're sitting on the grass, and we were getting bits of Sermon on the Mount, and suddenly they said, "Has anyone got any food?" Well, obviously they'd planted some. But the little boy in front of, there was a group of little boys in front of me, and one of them heard this, and he got hold of his biscuits, got hold of his rucksack, and he pushed them right down to the bottom of his rucksack, and he said, "Well, they're not getting mine." And I thought, no, darling, that's not quite what happened. This little boy wanted to give Jesus something, and he gave him what he had out of love. And what did Jesus do? "Well, thank you very much, but that's much too small." Or, "Thank you very much, but what do you think I'm going to do with that?" No. Jesus took them and prayed that God would be glorified through what was going to happen. And that little boy had no idea at all of what could happen in the hands of our mighty God. Jesus began to break them up, and he got the disciples to settle people in groups, and they went round offering it, and everybody had enough, and there were 12 baskets full left over. Our God provides beyond what we expect, always. You see, God uses anyone. It wasn't the first time that God has used children. Samuel in the temple being looked after by the priest. Eli's sons, the priest, his sons were doing evil. God used Samuel to give Eli the message. A little girl, slave girl. Her master had leprosy, Naaman. And the little girl didn't say, "Oh, well, I'm glad, it shouldn't have captured me." No, she said, "If he goes to my land, there's a man there that could help him." Jesus or God can use anybody. And the other thing is, it doesn't have to be a big thing, does it? This was a very small offering, but God used it. And we may be sitting there thinking, the world's in a dreadful situation. There is so much hate. You see it on the roads, you see it in the riots, you see it on the media if you do, it's there. And you can think, what can I do? I can't do anything. It's only me. No one's going to listen to me. What can I do? And the trouble is, unfortunately, here, but there are little things that we can do that can change someone's life, that can make their day. It's said that if you smile at someone, you can never give a smile away, because you smile at someone, someone's going to smile back at you, usually, unless they're really grumpy. And it shows a difference, because in this, you've got to admit, you walk along the streets and people are like, yeah? And you could be, I've often had to walk past a step right aside, and they're not even seeing me. And there are a lot of people that live on their own, go out on the roads, and it's treated as if they don't exist. You give someone a smile as you pass them, they smile back. And what you're saying is, I know you're there. And it can make all the difference. I was in the bank and I actually caught the eye of the lady and gave her a smile, didn't know her. And she smiled, this lovely smile back at me. And somebody said, goodness me, look at that smile. And I thought, wow, a little thing in the hand of God can make all the difference to somebody's life. A little act of kindness. I had a solitary lesson. When I left work, I got a real kick out of going to a supermarket and having all the time to buy stuff. No more rushing in at lunchtime or after work trying to get something. I had all day. So my real joy was, if I had a lot in my basket and someone had a little, I would say, would you like to go before me? Because I've got all day. And I did this in Iceland. There was a gentleman behind me, didn't have much in his basket, and I said, would you like to go before me? And he said, yes, thank you. And then suddenly he said, you've made my day. Well, I felt this was a bit over the top, and I started to laugh, and he said, no, it is so rare that someone is kind to you. Wow, what an indictment on our society. I don't think that's quite so true now, because whether it's the white hair, but since COVID, I've had so much kindness shown to me, I'm bowled over by it. But for some people, I've heard people say, I go and queue up to the till, not in the self-service, because I don't speak to anybody all day, and the only person I speak to is the lady behind the till who says, do you want to carry a bag? There are lots of people out there like that. A little bit of kindness in God's hands can change somebody's day, can help them get through another lonely time. We can all do that, can't we? There's something else we can pray. We can all pray. Years ago, 4 women were distressed by what they saw happening in Wales. They got together, and it is years ago, sorry, my age. Don't actually remember this, but it was right at the early 20th century, in the 1900s, right at the beginning. 4 people, women, started to pray regularly that things would change. Gradually, people started to go to church. Gradually, they were flocking to church. They got speakers in. There were meetings in the middle of the week. Miraculous healings were taking place. The Welsh revival is still talked about today. People heard about it and came to see what was happening. So much so that they say the pubs just closed because no one was going in there. They were all going to church. 4 people regularly prayed and poured their heart out to God that things would change in their country, in their area, in their town. We can all pray. God uses anybody. No gift is too small. An act of kindness, a smile, the prayer of a faithful person. Because in the hands of the God we've got, who's so big, so powerful, so amazing, so able, I'd run out of words to describe his greatness. In his hands, anything can happen, and it does. Who knows? We may never know what impact our smile had on that person. What impact our little act of kindness had on that person's day. We will never know, or we may, what impact our prayers for our country, which is falling to pieces with hate and with, I don't know, stabbings. It's not even hate. It's like, I don't like your look, boom, you're dead. It's terrible. Who could say what would happen if a few people prayed earnestly to God that this would all change? In the hands of God, anything can happen. And it does. He is a great God. I can testify to that. I came to Christ when, as much as I could understand, when I was 6. I'm now 83. He has been with me all that time. He has never been rude. He has never turned me away. He has done the most incredible things in my life that you will never... You think of all the people he's got to look after, and suddenly he's looking after me. And you think, wow, God knows where I am. He knows through my own fault, usually, I'm in this situation, and he's here to help me. We have a great God. We've got to open our eyes, open our hearts, open our understanding, have a great big God, because that's who we got. We have a saying in the Tuesday night Bible study We have to look at the bigger picture. We have to look at the bigger God. A little boy, 5 loaves, 2 fish, and God fed 5,000 people. Who could tell what God could do with our smiles, our offerings, our prayers? May God help us to really seriously think, I can't do anything about the situation. Rubbish. We can, because we have a great God who is able to do over and above anything we could dream of, because he's that great. May God help us so to do. Amen.